They thought I was the poor girlfriend who would vanish for a cash envelope, but that envelope started the war. My boyfriend watched me get handed a plastic fork and whispered for me to just take it. Hours later, he asked to borrow that money to buy a gift for the woman who humiliated me at the gala when she threw $100 of taxi money at my feet. I did not pick up the bill. I picked up the microphone. My name is Holly James, and for the last 8 months, I have been living a lie. If you looked at my driver's license, you would see that I am 34 years old. If you looked at my tax returns filed under my pseudonym for my day job, you would see that I am a logistics coordinator for a mid-level trucking broker called Blue Ridge Dispatch. My resume says I spend my days arguing with truckers about fuel surcharges, tracking lost pallets of frozen chicken, and earning $42,000 a year before taxes. I drive a Honda Civic that is 6 years old. I wear denim that I buy off the rack at Target. When I go out for dinner, I check the prices on the menu before I order, and I always ask for a to-go box. It is a perfectly constructed life. It is boring, stable, and completely invisible. The truth is a little more complicated. I am the founder and CEO of Hawthorne Secure Logistics. We do not move frozen chicken, we move high-value assets. If a museum needs to transport a $20 million painting from Paris to New York, they call us. If a tech giant needs to move prototype microchips that are worth more than the gross domestic product of a small island nation, they call us. My company is currently valued at just over $1.2 billion. My personal net worth sits comfortably in the 9 figures, but I do not tell people this, especially not men. I learned the hard way in my late 20s that wealth acts like a magnet for the worst kind of insecurity in men. I have dated men who wanted a mother, men who wanted an angel investor, and men who wanted a trophy to polish their own fragile egos. They never looked at me. They looked at the liquidity. They looked at the power. So, when I met Carter Langford at a coffee shop in downtown Los Angeles, I made a choice. I presented him with Holly the dispatcher, not Holly the CEO. Carter was different, or so I thought. He was 36, charming in that effortless way that comes from never having to worry about rent, and undeniably handsome. He had the kind of jawline you see in cologne commercials and the easy confidence of a man who has always had a safety net. He told me early on that he loved how real I was. He loved that I did not care about brands. He loved that I was impressed by the simple things. He called me his breath of fresh air in a city of smog and silicone. It was sweet, until it started to feel condescending. "My parents are going to love you," Carter said to me as we merged onto the highway, heading north toward Montecito. "Well, my dad will. My mom can be a little intense. She is just protective of the family legacy." I looked out the window, watching the dry California hills roll by. "Intense how?" "She has high standards," Carter said, keeping his eyes on the road. "She is used to a certain pedigree, but do not worry. I told her you are simple. I told her you are not like the girls in our circle who are just looking for a payout." I forced a smile, but my stomach tightened. Simple. That was his favorite word for me. It was not a compliment. It was a classification. It meant low maintenance. It meant low risk. This weekend was the big test. The official introduction. The Langford estate in Montecito was legendary. A sprawling compound that had been in his family for 3 generations. Going there meant things were serious. It meant he was considering a future. But for me, this weekend was not about impressing them. It was about observation. I needed to know if Carter Langford was the man who loved me for me, or if he was just another rich boy playing tourist in the life of a working-class girl. I had my answer about the family dynamic the moment we pulled up to the gate. The iron gates were 12 feet tall, gilded with gold leaf that was probably peeling under the scrutiny of the IRS. We drove up a long, winding driveway lined with imported Italian cypress trees. The house itself was a monster of Spanish colonial architecture, with white stucco walls and a terracotta roof that looked like it cost more than my entire imaginary salary at Blue Ridge Dispatch. "Just relax," Carter said, reaching over to squeeze my hand. His palm was damp. "Remember, let me do the talking about the finances and stuff. You just be you." I nodded. "I will be me." We parked in front of a fountain that featured a cherub urinating into a clamshell. Subtle. As we got out of the car, the front door swung open. Evelyn Langford did not walk. She glided. She was a woman who had been fighting the aging process with the ferocity of a cornered badger and the budget of a small military. Her face was tight, her skin smooth and unmoving. She wore a silk caftan that flowed around her like smoke, and her fingers were weighed down by diamonds that were large enough to have their own gravitational pull. "Carter," she said, her voice cool and airy. She offered him a cheek to kiss, then turned her gaze to me. It was a physical sensation, being looked at by Evelyn Langford. Her eyes started at my boots, practical leather, scuffed at the toe, traveled up my dark jeans, paused at my plain white blouse, and finally landed on my face. She did not smile. She looked at me the way a health inspector looks at a cockroach in a commercial kitchen. "And this must be Holly," she said. "Hi, Mrs. Langford," I said, extending my hand. "Thank you so much for having me." She looked at my hand for a solid 3 seconds before taking it. Her grip was limp. "Carter has told us so much about your situation. It is so brave of you to work in trucking. So gritty. It pays the bills," I said, keeping my voice light. "I am sure it tries to," she said. She turned back to Carter. "Your father is in the study. He is in a mood. The financing for the construction project is stalling again, and he has been screaming at lawyers all morning. Do try to cheer him up." Carter grimaced. "Is he still dealing with that audit?" "It is not an audit, darling. It is a compliance check." Evelyn snapped, her eyes narrowing. "Don't use such ugly words. Go say hello. I will show Holly to the guest quarters." Guest quarters. Not a guest room. Interesting. I followed Evelyn through the house. The interior was stunning. I had to admit, high ceilings, marble floors, art on the walls that looked authentic. But there was a tension in the air, a vibration of stress that hummed beneath the luxury. I could hear a man's voice booming from behind a closed mahogany door down the hall. "I do not care what the protocol is. I need that inventory released by Monday, or the bank pulls the bridge loan." Evelyn stiffened. She walked faster, her heels clicking sharply on the marble. "Your room is out through the garden. We thought you would be more comfortable in the carriage house. It is rustic. Carter said you are used to smaller spaces." "That sounds lovely," I said. We walked through a manicured garden to a small building that looked like it used to store lawnmowers. It was separate from the main house. It was a clear message: "You are not one of us. You do not sleep under our roof." "Dinner is at 7, Evelyn said, standing at the door of the carriage house. She did not invite me to explore the grounds. She did not offer me a glass of water. "Dress is formal. I assume you brought something appropriate, or did Carter help you?" "I brought a dress," I said. "Good. We are having a guest tonight, a business associate of Harrison's. Try not to be overwhelmed." She gave me a tight, pitying smile. "We can just say you are Carter's assistant if the conversation gets too complex for you." She turned and left before I could respond. I walked into the carriage house. It smelled like mildew and lemon pledge. The bed was a twin cot. There was no air conditioning, just a ceiling fan that wobbled ominously. I set my bag down on the floor and sat on the edge of the mattress. So this was it. This was the reality. They did not just see me as poor. They saw me as a charity case, a temporary amusement for their son until he grew up and married someone with a trust fund. I could have left. I could have called an Uber, gone back to LA, and broken up with Carter over text. But then I heard the shouting again. The main house windows were open, and the sound carried across the garden. I walked to the small window of the carriage house and cracked it open. "It is Hawthorne." The man's voice, Harrison Langford, was clear now. "It is Hawthorne. Secure logistics. They have the shipment flagged at the port. They are demanding a full origin audit before they release the steel and the fixtures." My breath hitched. I stood perfectly still, pressing myself against the wall next to the window. "Well, pay them off." That was Carter's voice. He sounded whiny, desperate. "You cannot pay off Hawthorne, you idiot," Harrison yelled. "They are not some two-bit trucking broker. They are the iron wall of the industry. Their CEO is a ghost. Nobody knows who runs the day-to-day. But they have a compliance department that is sharper than the FBI. If they flag the shipment, it means they found the discrepancies in the invoices. If they report it to the customs board, we are done. The loan defaults. I step back from the window, my heart pounding a slow, heavy rhythm against my ribs. It was one thing to suspect that your boyfriend's family was struggling to maintain their lifestyle. It was another thing entirely to realize that your own company was the one holding the guillotine blade above their necks. Harrison Langford was in trouble. He was trying to import construction materials, likely high-end steel and fixtures for one of his developments, and he had clearly cooked the books on the valuation to avoid taxes or to inflate his assets for a bank loan. My algorithms at Hawthorne would have picked up on the mismatch immediately. We flagged suspicious shipments automatically. Harrison was right about one thing: you cannot pay us off. I built Hawthorne on a foundation of absolute integrity, specifically because the logistics industry is so full of corruption. I sat back down on the lumpy bed. The irony was suffocating. They were treating me like a servant, looking down on me because they thought I was a dispatcher who barely made rent. Meanwhile, the man they were terrified of, the ghost CEO, who held their financial fate in the palm of a hand, was sitting in their carriage house, staring at their mildewed ceiling. I needed to leave. That was my first instinct. If I stayed, it was a conflict of interest. But then I thought about Carter. "You can't pay off Hawthorne," Harrison had said, and Carter's response had been, "Pay them off." My boyfriend, the man who claimed to love my moral compass, the man who said he hated the corruption of his parents' world, had immediately suggested bribery. I felt a coldness settle in my chest. It was a familiar feeling. It was the feeling I got right before I walked into a boardroom to hostilely acquire a competitor. It was the absence of emotion, replaced by pure strategy. They wanted to play a game. They wanted to show the poor girl her place. They wanted to parade their wealth and their power and make me feel small. I stood up and walked to my suitcase. I unzipped the inner lining. If they wanted to see a naive girl from the wrong side of the tracks, I would give them the performance of a lifetime. I would be wide-eyed. I would be grateful. I would be confused by their big words and their expensive wine. I would let them think I was nothing more than a temporary inconvenience, but I would not be defenseless. I reached into the lining of my suitcase and pulled out a small, black velvet pouch. Inside was not jewelry, it was a brooch. It looked like a cheap, costume jewelry flower, something you might buy at a swap meet for $5. It was gaudy, with fake gold petals and a glass center. I pinned it to the strap of the simple black dress I had brought for dinner. The glass center was a high-definition, wide-angle lens. The petal concealed a microphone with a range of 40 feet and noise cancellation technology capable of isolating whispers in a crowded room. It was a prototype from Hawthorne's security division, designed for undercover agents monitoring cartel shipments. It beamed encrypted data directly to a cloud server that only I could access. I looked at myself in the cracked mirror of the carriage house. "Okay, Holly," I whispered to my reflection. "Showtime." I was not just going to dinner, I was going to a deposition, and they had no idea they were already under oath. The dining room was a masterclass in intimidation. The walls were paneled in dark walnut, absorbing the light from the crystal chandelier overhead so that the room felt less like a place to eat and more like a place to pass judgment. The table was long enough to land a small aircraft on, set for 4, but the spacing was deliberate. Harrison sat at the head, Evelyn at the foot, and Carter and I were placed on opposite sides, separated by a vast expanse of polished mahogany and a centerpiece of white orchids that were so perfect they looked artificial. I noticed the chair immediately. Harrison and Evelyn sat on high-backed, velvet-upholstered thrones. Carter's chair was matching. Mine, however, was different. It was an antique wooden chair, beautiful to the untrained eye, but clearly brought in from a different set. As I sat down, I sank 2 inches lower than everyone else. It was a subtle, petty psychological trick. When I looked across at Carter, I had to tilt my chin up. When I looked at his parents, I was physically looking up at them, I was the child at the adult table. I was the servant waiting for instructions. Then there was the place setting. Everyone else had heavy, cut crystal goblets that caught the light in dazzling prisms. My water glass was a standard, thick-rimmed tumbler, the kind you get at a diner. My silverware was lighter, stamped with a different pattern, likely the everyday silver, while they used the family heirlooms. "Sit," Evelyn said, not looking up from her napkin, which she was unfolding with surgical precision. I sat. The brooch on my dress was angled perfectly toward her. "The soup is gazpacho," Evelyn announced as a silent member of the staff placed a bowl in front of me. "It is supposed to be cold. Please do not ask the kitchen to microwave it. We had a guest do that once. It was mortifying." "I like cold soup," I said, keeping my voice small. "It is very refreshing." Harrison was not eating. He was staring at his phone, which was vibrating against the tablecloth like a trapped insect. His face was a map of stress, lines etched deep around his mouth. He took a sip of wine, gulping it rather than tasting it. "Harrison, put the phone away," Evelyn snapped. "We have a guest." "We are performing civility. I am waiting for the call back from the bridge financing group," Harrison muttered, though he flipped the phone face down. "If I do not get the liquidity by Monday morning, the Port Authority seizes the containers. Do you have any idea what the storage fees are on 4 tons of marble and steel? It is bleeding us dry." "Evelyn, bleeding us." I took a spoonful of soup. It was bland. "It will be fine," Evelyn said dismissively. "It is always fine. You are Harrison Langford." She turned her eyes to me. The transition was instant, like a shark detecting blood in the water. She reached into her clutch, which was sitting on the table, a breach of etiquette she apparently forgave herself for, and pulled out a thick cream-colored envelope. She did not hand it to me. She slid it across the mahogany. It spun slightly and stopped right next to my cheap water glass. "Take it," she said. The room went silent. The only sound was the hum of the refrigerator in the distant kitchen, and the frantic beating of my own heart, not from fear, but from adrenaline. "What is this?" I asked, widening my eyes. "It is $10,000 in cash," Evelyn said. Her voice was flat, bored. "Untraceable, tax-free. I assume that is more money than you make in 3 months at that trucking dispatch center." I looked at the envelope. Then I looked at Carter. He was staring at his gazpacho. He was studying the floating garnish as if it held the secrets of the universe. He knew. He knew this was coming. "You want me to take this?" I asked. "I want you to take it, leave this house, and never contact my son again," Evelyn said. She picked up her wine glass. "Let us be realistic. Holly, you are a sweet girl, in a rustic sort of way, but you do not fit here. You are drowning in this chair. You are drowning in this room. Carter needs someone who understands the weight of our legacy, someone who can help him navigate his future, not someone he has to explain the menu to." She took a sip of wine. $10,000. Consider it a severance package for your time. It is generous." I looked at Carter again. I waited. This was the moment. In every romance novel, in every movie, this is when the hero stands up. This is when he throws his napkin down, tells his mother to go to hell, and grabs the girl's hand to storm out. Carter finally looked up. His eyes were watery, pleading. "Holly," he whispered. I held my breath. "Just take it," he said softly. The air left my lungs. "What?" I asked. "Just take it," he repeated, his voice gaining a little more strength, trying to rationalize the cowardice. "You have that credit card debt you told me about. You have your rent coming up. It is a lot of money. Holly, it could really help you start over. Mom is set on this. It is better this way." I stared at him, the man I had spent 8 months with, the man who held me when I pretended to cry over a lost bonus at work, the man who claimed he wanted a simple life. He was not just a coward. He was a pragmatist of the worst kind. He was selling me out for domestic peace. He was buying his own comfort with my dignity. I reached out and picked up the envelope. Evelyn smiled. It was a triumphant, ugly thing. "Smart girl," I knew you were practical. I opened the flap. Most people would have thrown it in her face, or they would have run away crying, leaving the money behind to prove a point about honor. I did neither. I reached inside and pulled out the stack of $100 bills. They were crisp, new. I licked my thumb. 1, I said aloud. I placed the bill on the table. 2, 3. Evelyn's smile faltered. What are you doing? I am counting it, I said, my voice completely devoid of emotion. You said 10,000. I want to make sure it is all here. I cannot afford to be shortchanged. You know how it is with rent. 4, 5, 6. The sound of the bills hitting the table was the loudest thing in the room. Snap, snap, snap. Carter looked horrified. Holly, stop. Just put it in your purse and go. 7, 8, 9. I will not stop, I said, not looking up. This is a business transaction, isn't it? Due diligence is required. Harrison's phone rang again. He snatched it up, ignoring Evelyn's glare. Yes, Harrison barked into the receiver. Talk to me. Did you get through to Hawthorne? I paused at $2,500. I held the bill in midair, listening. What do you mean they are reviewing the ethical compliance? Harrison's face went from red to pale gray. Who is the officer in charge? Get me a name. I want to speak to the CEO. I do not care if the CEO is invisible. Everyone has a price. Find out who runs Hawthorne Secure Logistics and offer them a consulting fee. Offer them whatever they want to sign off on the cargo. I placed the bill down. 26. I was the CEO. I was sitting 6 feet away from him, counting the bribe his wife had just given me to leave their son. The absurdity of it was almost intoxicating. If Harrison knew that the person who could save his empire or burn it to the ground was currently checking the authenticity of his wife's cash, he would have had a stroke right there in his velvet chair. They are saying it is a hard hold, Harrison said to the room. Though he was talking to no one in particular, he lowered the phone, looking dazed. The capital is frozen. If that cargo does not move by Tuesday, the bank calls the loan. We lose the development. Stop being dramatic, Harrison, Evelyn hissed. She turned back to me. You have counted enough. Is it acceptable? It seems to be, I said. I neatly restacked the bills and slid them back into the envelope. I tucked the envelope into my small, worn-out clutch. Evelyn gestured toward the door. Well, the driveway is long, but I am sure the walk will give you time to think. I picked up my spoon. Thank you for the gift, Mrs. Langford, I said, dipping the spoon into the gazpacho. This will really help with my student loans, but I'm actually quite hungry, and Carter did invite me for the weekend. Since I have already been paid, I suppose there is no rush to leave right this second. I would hate to waste food. You know how us poor people hate waste. Evelyn's mouth opened, but no sound came out. She looked at Carter. Get her out of here. Carter looked at me, then at his mother. He was trapped. If he kicked me out now, after I had taken the money and agreed to the terms, but simply asked to finish dinner, he would look like a monster. And Carter Langford hated looking like a monster. He preferred to be a monster in private. She can finish her soup, Mom, Carter mumbled. She has to call a taxi anyway. Ubers take 30 minutes to get out here. Evelyn made a noise in her throat that sounded like a cat being strangled. She stabbed at her salad. Fine, but the moment that spoon is down, you are gone. Understood, I said cheerfully. I took a bite of the soup. I reached into my pocket for my phone. Sorry, just need to check my bus schedule for later, I said. I unlocked the phone. I did not open a bus schedule app. I opened the secure messaging channel for the executive board of Hawthorne Secure Logistics. I typed rapidly, my thumb hovering over the screen so they could not see. To executive team, legal, compliance, from CEO, subject Langford account, status, immediate halt, instruction. Do not release the cargo. Do not accept any calls from Harrison Langford or his legal representatives. Initiate a level 5 forensic audit on their liquidity sources. I want to know where every single penny comes from. If they sneeze, I want it documented. Let them sit in the silence. I hit send. I put the phone down and smiled at Harrison. Is everything okay with your work, Mr. Langford? I asked innocently. You seem worried about logistics. I know a little bit about that. I work in dispatch. You know. Harrison looked at me with profound disgust. You move boxes of produce, young lady. I am dealing with international trade finance and supply chain complexities that would make your head spin. Please do not insult me by pretending to understand. Right, I said. Sorry, it just sounded like you were having trouble with a hold. Usually, those happen when the paperwork doesn't match the reality. Harrison's eyes narrowed. For a second, I thought he saw me. Really saw me. But then the arrogance washed back over his face. Eat your soup, he grunted. The silence returned, heavy and thick. I enjoyed it. I enjoyed every second of their discomfort. I ate my soup slowly, savoring the bland tomato water as if it were ambrosia. I watched Evelyn watch me. She was vibrating with rage. She had paid for a disappearance and received a lingering guest. I was just scraping the bottom of the bowl when the chime of the front doorbell echoed through the house. It was a deep, resonant sound, announcing an arrival of importance. Evelyn's face transformed instantly. The scowl vanished, replaced by a bright, plastic smile. She smoothed her hair. That must be her, Evelyn said, her voice rising an octave to a tone of sickening sweetness. Harrison, pull yourself together. Carter, sit up straight. Who is it? Carter asked, looking relieved for the interruption. Serena, Evelyn said, beaming. Serena Vale. She is joining us for dessert. She is bringing that wonderful energy of hers, and her father is the senator. So please, Harrison, do not talk about your financial messy bits. She looked at me. And you? Not a word. You are the help now. If she asks, you are Carter's assistant who is just leaving. Do not embarrass us. I wiped my mouth with the napkin. I wouldn't dream of it, I said. The dining room doors opened. The butler stepped aside, and in walked the nightmare. Serena Vale swept into the room like a hurricane wrapped in designer silk. If Evelyn Langford was the ice queen of Montecito, Serena was the fire that consumed all the oxygen in the room. She was the wife of Carter's older brother, who was conveniently absent on a business trip in Dubai, leaving Serena to play the role of the family's golden connection to the political elite. Her father was a senator, or so the story went, and the Langfords treated her not as a daughter-in-law, but as a lifeline to a world they were desperately trying to remain part of. She was beautiful in a manufactured way. Her hair was a shade of blonde that cost $500 every 3 weeks to maintain, and her dress was a shimmering column of silver that looked heavy enough to be armor. But it was the noise she made that struck me first. She laughed before she even fully entered the dining room, a loud, practiced sound that demanded attention. Sorry I'm late, she announced, throwing her clutch onto an empty chair. The traffic coming down from the hills was absolute murder, and then the gate code wouldn't work. Harrison, you really need to fix that system. It is so temperamental. She kissed Evelyn on both cheeks, ignored Harrison's grunt of greeting, and then stopped dead when she saw me. I was still holding my spoon, finishing the last of the gazpacho as I had promised. Serena looked at me, then at Evelyn, and then back at me. Her eyes scanned my off-the-rack dress, my lack of jewelry, and my sensible haircut. She tilted her head, a small, cruel smile playing on her lips. Oh, wonderful, Serena said, clapping her hands together lightly. Did you finally fire that dreadful woman? Marta, this new one looks much more focused. Is she staying to clear the plates? The silence that followed lasted exactly 1 second. Then, Evelyn laughed. It was a light, tinkling laugh, as if Serena had just made a witty observation about the weather. Harrison chuckled into his wine glass, and then the knife twisted. Carter laughed. It was a nervous, staccato sound, a laugh born of fear and the desperate need to blend in. But it was a laugh nonetheless. He looked at me, his eyes begging me to understand the joke, begging me not to make a scene. No, darling, Evelyn said, wiping a tear of mirth from her eye. "This is Holly, Carter's friend. She's visiting for the weekend." "Oh," Serena's hand flew to her chest in mock horror. "Oh, I am so sorry. You just sat so quietly. And with that dress, well, it is very practical, very staff appropriate. My mistake." She did not apologize to me. She apologized to the room for the awkwardness of my existence. "It is fine," I said, my voice steady. "I get that a lot. People often mistake simplicity for servitude." Serena's eyes narrowed slightly, sensing the bite in my tone, but Evelyn intervened before the tension could snap. "Holly insists on being low maintenance," Evelyn said, signaling for the staff to bring the next course. "Actually, speaking of maintenance, Charles, bring Holly the stainless steel set for the main course. We wouldn't want her to worry about scratching the antique silver. It is so soft. You know." The butler, a man who looked like he would rather be anywhere else, removed my heavy silver fork and knife and replaced them with the cafeteria-grade cutlery I had noticed earlier on the sidebar. It was a deliberate, childish humiliation. I picked up the cheap fork. It felt light and flimsy in my hand. "Thank you, Evelyn. Very thoughtful." As the filet mignon was served, Serena took command of the table. She talked about a gala she had attended in D.I.C., dropping names of congressmen and lobbyists like breadcrumbs. She complained about the quality of champagne in first class. She was performing, and the Langfords were a captivated audience. But I was not listening to her voice. I was looking at her wrist. Serena gestured wildly when she spoke, and every time she moved her left hand, something sparkled under the chandelier light. It was a bracelet, a heavy platinum cuff encrusted with a very specific arrangement of sapphires and diamonds. It was structured like a constellation, with a large, teardrop sapphire at the center. My heart skipped a beat, then it started hammering a war drum against my ribs. I knew that bracelet. 3 weeks ago, a high-priority shipment from a jeweler in Zurich had been compromised during a transfer at JFK Airport. It was a discreet job, handled by Hawthorne Secure Logistics. The container had been breached, and a single lockbox was removed. Inside was a custom piece commissioned for the wife of an oil tycoon, the Celestial Cuff. We had the blueprints. We had the serial numbers, and we had the insurance liability, which was currently sitting at $400,000. And there it was, on the wrist of a senator's daughter in Montecito. I needed to be sure. I waited until Serena was deep into a story about a yacht party in Ibiza. And of course, the captain insisted we take the helicopter to the shore, but I told him. I shifted in my chair, slipping my hand into my clutch under the table. I tapped the side of my phone, activating the camera on the brooch pinned to my dress. I leaned forward slightly, feigning interest in her story. "That sounds incredible, Serena," I said, interrupting her. "And that bracelet is stunning. I have never seen a design like that. Is it custom?" Serena preened. She held her wrist up, turning it so the light caught the gems. Oh, thank you. It is a little gift from an admirer in Europe. He said it reminded him of my eyes. It is vintage, from the 1920s, Art Deco. You probably wouldn't recognize the designer. They are very niche. Click. My brooch captured 3 high-definition frames of the bracelet. "It is beautiful," I said. "The blue stones, are they tanzanite?" "Sapphires, darling," Serena corrected me with a sneer. "Royal blue sapphires. Tanzanite is a semi-precious stone. This is serious jewelry." I smiled. "Of course. My mistake." Under the table, I unlocked my phone and accessed the Hawthorne Secure app. I synced the brooch's gallery to the chat and forwarded the images to the head of asset recovery. "Text run this against the Zurich loss file, specifically the Celestial Cuff. Confirm the setting on the center stone. It looks like the midnight tear cut. I need a match within 10 minutes. Harrison, meanwhile, was spiraling again. The presence of Serena had reminded him of the power he was losing. "Serena," Harrison said, cutting through her yacht story, "I need to ask you something." Your father, does he still have that contact at the Trade Commission? I am being stonewalled by this logistics firm. They are talking about a leadership ethics review. It is absurd. I need someone to make a call and tell them who they are dealing with. Oh, Daddy is so busy, Serena said, waving her hand dismissively. But I can ask, who is the firm? Hawthorne. Harrison spat the name out like a curse. They are holding my bridge capital hostage. If I do not get that inventory released, the bank pulls the plug on Tuesday. I just need a bridge loan, or a release of assets. Anything to show the auditors we are liquid. Hawthorne. Serena frowned. I think I have heard of them. Are they the ones who handle the diplomatic pouches? They handle everything valuable. Harrison groaned. And they are impossible to bribe. I tried to reach out to their board, but it is like a fortress. Carter cleared his throat. He looked at me, then at his father. Maybe we should not talk business at dinner. Dad, Holly doesn't understand all this high-level finance stuff. It is boring for her. I looked at Carter. He was smiling that weak, pleading smile again. He was trying to protect me from boredom, no. He was trying to protect himself from the reality that he was dating a woman he considered beneath him, while his family discussed using political favors to bypass the law. He was ashamed of me. He wanted me to be the invisible, dumb girlfriend who just nodded and ate her meat with the stainless steel fork. Oh, I do not mind, I said cheerfully. I am learning so much. So, Harrison, this ethics review, does that mean they think you did something wrong? The table went deadly silent. Harrison looked at me with a vein throbbing in his temple. It means they are bureaucratic parasites, young lady. It means they are fishing for a payout. Actually, Serena interjected, eager to show off her knowledge. I have a friend who used to work in logistics. He said Hawthorne is obsessed with the source of funds. They only freeze accounts if they suspect the money is, well, dirty, she giggled. Not that yours is, Harrison, but you know, maybe you move some things around too creatively. She took a sip of her wine and winked. I looked at the bracelet again. The irony was so thick I could taste it. Here was a woman wearing $400,000 of stolen merchandise stolen from the very company she was gossiping about, lecturing a man about dirty money. My phone buzzed silently against my thigh. 3 vibrations. That was the code for a positive match. I glanced down at the screen in my lap. From Asset Recovery. Match confirmed. 99.8% probability. Item 884 ZUR. The Celestial Cuff. Reported stolen 21 days ago. Police report filed in New York and Geneva. Tracking indicates it was sold on the black market in Miami 2 weeks ago. Holly, are you safe? That item is linked to the Varga Syndicate. I felt a chill run down my spine that had nothing to do with the air conditioning. Serena Vale was not just a snob. She was not just a liar who claimed a stolen modern piece was vintage Art Deco. She was a consumer of black market goods. She was wearing a felony on her wrist, and the Langfords, they were pinning their hopes on her. They thought she was their savior. They thought her political connections would rescue Harrison's crumbling empire. They had no idea that she was likely drowning in debt herself, buying stolen luxury goods to keep up appearances. Or worse, she was knowingly laundering assets for criminals. Is the wine to your liking, Holly? Evelyn asked, her voice dripping with sarcasm. I noticed you haven't touched it. It is a 1996 Bordeaux, perhaps a bit too complex for a palate used to box wine. I looked at the glass. Then I looked at Serena, who was now holding court about the quality of caviar in Paris. The wine is lovely, Evelyn, I said, but I was actually admiring Serena's bracelet again. You know, Serena, you said it was Art Deco. I'm confused. Art Deco usually favors geometric platinum settings. But that center stone, the cut looks like a midnight tear. That laser cutting technique wasn't invented until 2005. Serena froze. Her fork stopped halfway to her mouth. What? She snapped. Do not be ridiculous. I told you. It is a niche designer. You wouldn't know. You are right, I said, leaning back and crossing my arms. I probably wouldn't know. I just read a lot of magazines at the dispatch office. We have a lot of downtime between trucks. Exactly, Serena said, recovering her composure but looking rattled. Stick to your trucks. Sweetie, leave the jewelry to the experts. Carter let out a breath he had been holding. Yeah, Holly. Serena knows what she is talking about. I looked at Carter one last time. He had chosen the fraud with the stolen diamonds over the woman who actually controlled the logistics of his life. He had chosen the illusion of wealth over the reality of integrity. You are right, Carter, I said softly. She certainly seems to know exactly what she is worth. The dinner was no longer just a social torture session. It was an evidence-gathering operation, and I had just found the smoking gun. The Langfords were not just broke. They were about to be implicated in a federal investigation, and I was the only one in the room who could hear the sirens coming. Harrison's phone buzzed again. He looked at it, his face lighting up with false hope. It is the bank, he whispered. Maybe they found a workaround. He didn't know the bank was calling because I had just ordered my team to flag his accounts for suspicious association with known fences. Take the call. Harrison, I said, picking up my glass of water. I have a feeling it is important. The separation happened immediately after dessert. The humiliating dinner had concluded with Evelyn sipping her espresso and looking at me as if I were a stain on her grandmother's tablecloth that she could not quite scrub out. It is late, Evelyn announced, standing up. Carter, you are in the East Wing suite. Of course, we have had the linens pressed with lavender, just how you like them. She turned to me. Her eyes did not soften. And Holly, as I mentioned, the carriage house is prepared for you. It is quite private. You will not be disturbed by the main house activities. Wait, I said, looking at Carter. I thought we were staying together. Carter rubbed the back of his neck, avoiding my eyes. Mom has these rules. Holly, unmarried couples, you know. It is an old-fashioned house. Old-fashioned, I repeated. Carter, we have lived together in Los Angeles for 8 months. This is Montecito, Evelyn interjected sharply. We have standards. The carriage house is perfectly adequate. It has a bed and a sink. What more do you need? I looked at Carter. This was his moment. He could say, if she stays in the shed, I stay in the shed. He could say, we are leaving. Instead, he sighed. Just try to be understanding. Holly, it is just for a few nights. Ranging it out will keep the peace. Please, for me. For you, I said. The words tasted like ash. I walked out to the carriage house alone. The California night was cool, but the moment I stepped inside the small detached building, heat blasted me in the face. It had been baking in the sun all day with the windows closed, and there was no air conditioning. It smelled of gasoline and old fertilizer. The bed was a cot pushed against a wall that was peeling paint. There were spiders in the corners. It wasn't a guest room. It was a storage unit they had grudgingly cleared out. I lay on the lumpy mattress, staring at the dark ceiling. I could see the lights of the main house glowing warm and golden through the dirty window. Carter was in there, probably sinking into 400 thread count sheets, smelling lavender. I was out here, sweating through my pajamas, listening to the crickets and the slow, steady breaking of my own heart. I did not sleep. I plodded. The next morning, the humiliation shifted venues. We are going to the club, Serena announced at breakfast, a breakfast I was not invited to eat, but rather summoned to attend once everyone else had finished. I stood by the door while they wiped their mouths with linen napkins. I need to work on my backhand, and Harrison needs a drink. Holly, you can come. Try not to wear anything too loud. I wore a plain white polo and a tennis skirt I had packed. It was standard attire, but on me. They made it look like a uniform. When we arrived at the Montecito Country Club, the hierarchy was reestablished immediately. The valet opened the door for Evelyn and Serena. Carter got out on his own. I was left to scramble out of the back seat of the SUV. Here, Serena said, shoving a heavy canvas bag into my chest. Carry this. My shoulder is acting up from Pilates. This is heavy, I said, shifting the weight. What is in here, Bricks? It is my gear. Darling, rackets, shoes, water. Just bring it to court 4, and do not drag it on the grass." She walked off. Her arm linked with Evelyn's. They looked like a two-headed monster of beige cashmere and entitlement. I looked at Carter. He was adjusting his collar in the reflection of the car window. He checked his teeth. He smoothed his hair. He did not look at me. He did not offer to take the bag. "Carter," I said. "Yeah." He turned, still checking his profile. "Do I look okay?" "I think Serena invited some investors to watch us play. I need to look sharp." "The bag," I said, nodding to the heavy weight in my arms. "Oh, just bring it," he said distractedly. "Hurry up. Holly, you are lagging behind. It looks bad." He jogged off to catch up with his mother. I stood there for a moment in the parking lot. The sun was beating down. I was the CEO of a billion-dollar logistics company. I had 3 personal assistants who would tackle a linebacker to carry a coffee cup for me, and here I was, sweating in a parking lot, carrying the tennis gear of a woman who was wearing stolen jewelry. I hoisted the bag onto my shoulder. Fine. I walked to the courts. The club was beautiful, manicured to within an inch of its life. Staff members in crisp whites moved silently, delivering iced towels and cocktails. When I arrived at Court 4, Serena and Carter were already rallying. Evelyn and Harrison sat under a white umbrella, drinking Bloody Marys. "Put it there," Serena yelled from the baseline, pointing her racket at a patch of grass near the fence. "And get me my water. The pink bottle, not the blue one." I set the bag down. I found the pink bottle. I walked it over to her. "Ice," she demanded, not looking at me. "It needs more ice. Go find a waiter." I was not a guest. I was a prop. I was a background extra in the movie of their lives, there to make them look richer, more important, more served. As I walked toward the clubhouse to find ice, I spotted a camera dome mounted on the corner of the pro shop. It was a high-end model, a PTZ 400 with facial recognition capabilities. I knew it well. Hawthorne Logistics installed similar systems in high-security warehouses. I veered off the path and headed for the security office. I found the door marked private and knocked. A man in a blue blazer opened it. He looked annoyed until he saw the way I was standing shoulders back, chin up. "Can I help you?" "Ma'am, this area is restricted." "My name is Holly James," I said, my voice dropping the naive girlfriend act for 10 seconds. "I am a guest of the Langfords. I noticed your perimeter cameras are running a redundant loop on the south lawn. You have a blind spot near the service entrance." The man blinked. "Excuse me." "I work in the industry," I lied smoothly. "I just wanted to give you a heads up. Also, I need you to do me a favor. Archive the footage from Court 4 between 10 in the morning and noon today. Keep it on a separate server. I can't just—" "The woman on Court 4 is Serena Vale," I said, lowering my voice. "She is wearing a piece of jewelry that is currently the subject of an insurance investigation. If that bracelet goes missing, or if she claims it was stolen on your property, you are going to want proof that she was wearing it when she arrived and exactly who was near her. Unless you want your club liable for a $400,000 claim." The color drained from the manager's face. Liability was the one word that terrified people in his position more than death. "I will archive the footage immediately," he stammered. "Good. And keep this conversation between us. We don't want to spook the suspect." I turned and walked back to the court. By the time I returned with the ice, I was back in character, shoulders slumped, eyes downcast. Harrison was on his 3rd Bloody Mary, and his voice was getting loud. "I am telling you, Evelyn, the bank called again at 8 this morning," he was saying, wiping sweat from his forehead. "They are not extending the grace period. If I cannot show a liquid injection of $500,000 by Monday to cover the interest and the port fees, they initiate the clawback protocols. They will freeze the personal accounts." "Lower your voice," Evelyn hissed, glancing at the people at the next table. "We are in public." "I need cash," Harrison moaned. "I need cash now. Real cash, not assets. I need to pay off the Port Authority to release the hold so I can sell the materials." Carter walked off the court, sweating and beaming. He had just won a point against Serena. "Did you see that serve?" he asked, grabbing a towel. "I have still got it." "You were wonderful, darling," Evelyn said. Though she wasn't looking at him, she was looking at Harrison with terrified eyes. Serena marched over, tossing her racket at me. I caught it reflexively. "My grip is slippery," she complained. "Holly, go to the pro shop and get this rewrapped. And be quick. We have another set to play." "Actually," Carter said, stepping in front of me. "Holly, can I talk to you for a second? Over there?" He pointed to a secluded bench near the hedges. My heart gave a little flutter. Was this it? Was he finally going to apologize? Did he see how they were treating me? Did he realize that asking his girlfriend to re-grip his sister-in-law's racket was insanity? I followed him to the bench. He looked nervous. He kept glancing back at Serena, who was checking her makeup in a compact mirror. "What is it, Carter?" I asked. He took my hands. His palms were sweaty. "Look, babe, I know this weekend has been a little intense," he started. "My family can be a lot, but you are doing great. Really. I am being treated like a servant. Carter." I know," he said quickly. "And I will make it up to you, I promise. But right now, we have a bigger problem. You heard, Dad? The business is in a tight spot. We really need Serena's dad to make that call to the Trade Commission. And Serena is, well, she is high maintenance," Carter said, forcing a laugh. "She is really into this vintage handbag she saw in the pro shop window. It is a Hermes, a collector's item. It is $5,000. I stared at him. I knew where this was going, but I needed to hear him say it. I needed to hear the words so I could carve them into my memory. "She is upset because she forgot her wallet in the car." Carter continued, speaking faster now. "And I maxed out my cards on the flight and the deposit for the club. Dad is frozen out until Monday." He squeezed my hands. "Holly, that envelope Mom gave you last night." The world seemed to stop spinning for a second. The birds stopped singing. The tennis balls stopped thwacking. "You want the money?" I asked. "The money your mother gave me to break up with you." "It is not for me," Carter pleaded. "It is for the family. It is a loan. I will pay you back double next week when the deal clears. I just need to buy that bag for Serena so she stays in a good mood and calls her dad for us. It is an investment. Holly, please, you said you wanted to help. You said you loved me." He was looking at me with those puppy dog eyes that used to make me melt. Now, they just looked wet and weak. He was asking me to fund the bribe for the woman who was bullying me. Using the money that was intended to bribe me into leaving him. It was a snake eating its own tail of moral bankruptcy. I looked at him. I really looked at him. I saw the fear. I saw the selfishness. I saw a man who would sell anyone and anything to keep his comfortable life afloat. "Okay," I said. Carter exhaled, his shoulders sagging with relief. "Really, oh my God. Thank you. You are the best. You are literally saving us." I reached into my bag. I had the envelope with me. I hadn't left it in the insecure shed. I pulled it out. The $10,000. "Here," I said, handing it to him. "Take half. Take 5,000. Buy her the bag." He grabbed the envelope. He didn't even check to see if I had kept any for myself. He just saw the cash. "You are amazing," he said, kissing me on the forehead, a wet, distracted peck. "I have to run and get it before she goes back out on the court. You are a lifesaver. Holly." He turned and ran toward the pro shop, clutching the envelope of cash like a lifeline. I sat on the bench alone. I watched him run. I watched him sprint to buy a $5,000 purse for a woman wearing a stolen bracelet, using money his mother gave me to disappear. I didn't cry. I didn't feel angry. I felt a cold, hard clarity settling in my chest like concrete. The smallest amount sometimes buys the biggest truth. He had sold me for $5,000. He had sold his dignity for a handbag. I took out my phone. I opened the Hawthorne app. To legal team. From Holly James. Subject acquisition strategy. Message. Prepare the purchase agreement for the debt notes on Langford Construction. Contact their creditors. Buy the debt. All of it. I want to own every cent they owe by sunset tomorrow. Proceed with the hostile takeover. I stood up. I had a tennis racket to re-grip. After all, I wanted Serena to have a good grip on things when I ripped the ground out from under her feet. The afternoon sun in Montecito was golden and heavy, but the atmosphere on the terrace was frigid. Evelyn had summoned the girls, a trio of women who looked like they shared the same plastic surgeon and the same disdain for anything that did not cost 5 figures. They sat around a glass table, clutching stems of crystal, ready to inspect the curiosity that was Carter's unfortunate girlfriend. I sat on the edge of my wicker chair, hands folded in my lap. I was the entertainment. I was the zoo animal brought out for the amusement of the donors. So, began a woman introduced as Beatrice, peering at me over the rim of her sunglasses. Evelyn tells us you work in transportation. Is that right? Do you drive the trucks? The other women tittered. It was a practiced, synchronized sound, like wind chimes made of bone. I work in dispatch, I said politely. I coordinate logistics. It is mostly spreadsheets and phone calls. Fascinating, Beatrice said, clearly meaning the opposite. I suppose someone has to ensure the Amazon packages arrive. We were just discussing the wine. Evelyn opened a bottle from the cellar, a 1982 Petrus. It is wasted on us, really. But Harrison insists. She swirled the dark red liquid in her glass. What do you think of it? Holly? Or is it a bit heavy compared to what you are used to? She was baiting me. She wanted me to say it tasted like grapes. She wanted me to say it was good. She wanted to prove that my palate was as cheap as my shoes. I picked up the glass. I didn't drink. I just tilted it slightly, watching the legs, the droplets running down the side of the glass. It is interesting, I said, keeping my voice mild. The 1982 was a legendary vintage for Pomerol, but if I am not mistaken, this bottle has been decanted for nearly 3 hours. Evelyn froze. We opened it at lunch. Why? Well, I said, setting the glass down gently. A Petrus of this age is delicate. After 3 hours of oxygenation, the fruit structure collapses. You lose the black truffle and cherry notes, and you are left with mostly sediment and acid. It is actually quite flat now. Ideally, you should have poured it straight from the bottle or decanted it for no more than 30 minutes. The silence on the terrace was absolute. A hummingbird whirred nearby, the only thing daring to move. Beatrice looked at her glass, then at me, then at Evelyn. She must have read that on her phone, Beatrice stammered, forcing a laugh. Everyone has Google these days. It is adorable how they memorize facts to fit in. Yes, Evelyn agreed quickly, her eyes hard beads of anger. Very resourceful. Holly. Memorizing wine spectators' ratings. How quaint. They dismissed me. They had to. To admit that I actually knew what I was talking about would be to admit that their superiority was an illusion. They retreated into their bubble, convinced that I was a parrot mimicking human speech, but I had seen the flicker of doubt in their eyes, and that was all I needed, while they turned the conversation to a charity auction for polo ponies. My phone buzzed against my thigh. It was the update I'd been waiting for. I excused myself to use the restroom. Slipping away into the cool interior of the main house, I locked myself in the powder room and opened the secure file. Subject Serena Vale. Asset tracing status. Critical report. The target is insolvent. Multiple aliases detected. Serena Vale is a modification of her birth name. Sarah Valesky. Credit rating is sub 500. She has 7 maxed-out credit cards and a pending lawsuit from a landlord in New York for $50,000 in unpaid rent. The political connections are exaggerated. Her father was a state senator for 1 term in the 90s and is currently bankrupt. The bracelet is confirmed stolen merchandise from the Varga ring. We have also linked her to a loan shark repayment schedule. She owes $200,000 to private lenders. I stared at the screen. The picture was complete, and it was pathetic. Serena wasn't a rich heiress looking down on me. She was a drowning woman climbing onto the Langford's lifeboat, not realizing the lifeboat was already full of holes. She was wearing stolen jewelry not because she was a criminal mastermind, but because she couldn't afford to buy real status. So she rented it from the black market. She was likely pushing Harrison to get money so she could pay off her own debts before her legs got broken. God, I whispered. It is a house of cards built on a swamp. I flushed the toilet for appearances and washed my hands. When I looked in the mirror, I didn't see a victim anymore. I saw a surgeon preparing to cut out a tumor. I walked back out. I didn't return to the terrace immediately. I found Harrison in the library. He was with Carter, and the door was slightly ajar. I stood in the hallway, adjusting my shoe, listening. The bridge loan has to come through. Carter. Harrison was pacing. I could hear his heavy footsteps. I moved the liability. I signed the indemnity clause. What does that mean? Carter asked. His voice sounded thin, scared. It means, Harrison hissed, that I structured the deal so that if the cargo is seized or rejected, the logistics partner takes the hit on the bond. I shifted the risk. It is a standard maneuver, but the partner has to be unaware of the specific compliance failure. I stiffened. You mean you tricked them? Carter asked. I did not trick them. I leveraged the ambiguity of the contract, Harrison yelled, then lowered his voice. Look, the company is Hawthorne Secure Logistics. They are huge. They won't even feel a $5 million write-off. But for us, it is life or death. If they reject the shipment, the clause triggers, and we are liable. If they accept it, and then Customs seizes it, Hawthorne is liable because they took custody. I need them to take custody. I need them to sign the manifest. I felt a cold rage settle in my gut. It wasn't just incompetence, it was malicious fraud. Harrison Langford was trying to trick my company into accepting responsibility for his illegal, undervalued cargo. He was trying to use my employees, my reputation, and my capital as his insurance policy. He was trying to steal $5 million from me. I walked into the library. Harrison jumped. Carter spilled a little of his drink. Holly? Carter squeaked. We were just talking strategy. I am sorry to interrupt, I said, widening my eyes innocently. I was just looking for the patio. This house is so big. I get lost. I stepped further into the room. I looked at Harrison. You look stressed. Mr. Langford? I said. Is it the logistics thing again? You know, at Blue Ridge Dispatch? We sometimes have clients who try to hide the weight of their loads to save money. We usually catch them at the scales. Harrison sneered. This is not about weighing trucks, girl. This is about complex derivatives and custodial transfer. Oh, I said. But isn't the principle the same if you hand off a package that you know is broken? Isn't that, well, cheating? Harrison's face turned purple. It is called business. It is called mitigating exposure. You wouldn't understand. You live paycheck to paycheck. True, I said calmly, but I always thought business was about partnership, trust. Trust is for fools, Harrison scoffed. Leverage is for winners. We are waiting on Hawthorne. Once they sign that digital release, we are clear. They are the big logistics saviors. They are too big to check every single container manifest personally. Carter nodded, eager to agree with his father. Yeah, exactly. Hawthorne is like a machine. They will just process it. We just need to wait them out. Hawthorne, I repeated the name, tasting it. They sound very professional. I wonder if they have a system for detecting when someone is trying to use them. They are a computer program. Harrison waved his hand dismissively. There is no human oversight on the mid-level approvals. That is the loophole. Now, go back to the women. We are busy. I turned to leave. Of course, I said. I will go back to the women. And Harrison, good luck with the loophole. I hear computers are getting smarter these days. I walked out of the library and down the hall. My hands were not shaking. My breathing was steady. For the last 24 hours, I had been operating on a personal level. I wanted to expose them because they were mean to me. I wanted to embarrass them because they humiliated me. It was petty. It was emotional. But now it was professional. Harrison Langford wasn't just a bad father and a snob. He was a corporate predator. He was actively trying to defraud my company. He was willing to let my reputation take a hit to save his own skin. I pulled out my phone again. To legal. Compliance. Executive board. From CEO. Subject Operation Glasshouse. Message. The Langford attempted fraud is confirmed. They are relying on the automated mid-level approval queue to transfer liability for the seized cargo to us. Do not reject the shipment yet. I repeat, do not reject. Instruction. Manually override the system. Move the shipment status to pending executive review. Keep them in purgatory. I want them to think they are close. I want them to think the signature is one click away. Also, prepare a full dossier on the liability fraud. I want it ready for presentation. I am going to deliver the rejection personally. I walked back out to the terrace. The women were laughing at something Serena had said. Evelyn was pouring more of the ruined wine. They looked up as I approached. "Oh, you found your way back," Evelyn said. "We were just talking about the gala tonight. Serena is wearing a dress by Valentino. I suppose you will be wearing what you have on." "Actually," I said, sitting down and crossing my legs, "I have a dress. It is black. Simple." "Black is safe," Serena said, touching her stolen bracelet. "It hides the stains." "It does," I agreed, looking her dead in the eye. "And it is great for funerals." "Funerals?" Evelyn asked, raising an eyebrow. "Who is dying?" I smiled. It was the first genuine smile I had shown them all weekend. "Oh, nobody," I said. "Just a figure of speech. Sometimes, old things have to die to make room for the truth." They stared at me. For a second, the air felt charged, electric. They sensed something had changed. The poor, naive Holly had evaporated, and something harder had taken her place. But then, arrogance took over. They laughed. They poured more wine. They went back to talking about horses and vacations. I sat back and watched the sunset. They were waiting for Hawthorne to save them. They were waiting for the big logistics company to sign the paper and take their poison pill. They didn't know that Hawthorne was sitting in the wicker chair, drinking their water, and planning their execution. I wasn't just going to break up with Carter. I wasn't just going to embarrass Evelyn. I was going to dismantle their entire world, brick by corrupt brick, and I was going to do it with the full weight of the company they tried to cheat. Tonight was the gala. Tonight was the end. The air in the drawing room was thick enough to choke on. It was 6 o'clock in the evening, and the transformation for the charity gala was complete. The Langford family stood in a tableau of expensive fabrics and even more expensive nervous energy. Harrison was pacing near the fireplace, adjusting his tuxedo cummerbund and muttering about interest rates. Evelyn was a vision in emerald green silk, though her face was set in a permanent grimace of disapproval as she inspected a tray of hors d'oeuvres that no one was eating. And then there was Serena. She was wearing the Valentino dress she had bragged about, a sweeping red number that screamed for attention. She moved around the room with a frantic energy, touching surfaces, rearranging pillows, and creating a wake of chaos. Carter stood by the window, looking handsome but hollow in his black tie, refusing to make eye contact with me. I stood near the door, clutching my small, battered clutch bag. I was wearing the simple black column dress I had brought. To their eyes, it looked like a department store clearance rack find. In reality, it was a bespoke piece from a stealth wealth designer in Milan, cut from vintage silk, but I knew they did not have the taste to recognize quality that did not scream a brand name. "We leave in 20 minutes, Evelyn announced, snapping her fingers at a maid to clear a glass. "Holly, do try to stay out of the official photographs tonight. The press will be there, and we want to present a cohesive image." "Understood," I said quietly. "I need a mint," Serena announced suddenly. She was standing near the antique console table where I had set my clutch down moments ago to adjust my shoe. "Does anyone have a mint? My throat is parched." "Check your purse, darling," Evelyn said. I did. "It is empty." Serena turned, her eyes landing on my bag. "Holly, do you have any gum or a mint? You people always carry gum, don't you?" "I don't think so," I said, "but you are welcome to check." I shouldn't have said that, but in my mind, I had nothing to hide. I was thinking like an innocent person. I forgot I was dealing with a predator. Serena lunged for my bag before I could step forward. She didn't just look. She rummaged. She opened the clasp and shoved her hand inside, digging around with aggressive force. "Serena, really?" Carter mumbled. But he didn't move. "No, nothing here," Serena said, withdrawing her hand quickly. She didn't look at me. She looked at Evelyn. There was a micro-expression passed between them, a flash of communication so fast that if I hadn't been trained to read boardrooms, I would have missed it. Serena turned back to the mirror to fix her lipstick. "Oh well, I will survive." 2 minutes passed. The silence stretched. Then, the performance began. Serena gasped. It was a theatrical, sharp intake of breath that sounded like a bad actress in a soap opera. She clutched her earlobe. "My earring!" she shrieked. "My diamond stud. It is gone." Evelyn spun around. "What, the 3-carat solitaire?" "Yes, I had it on a second ago." Serena began frantically patting the floor. The console table, her own chest. "I took it off for a second to adjust the backing because it was pinching, and I set it right here, right on the console." She pointed to the exact spot where my bag had been sitting. "It is gone," Serena wailed. Turning to Harrison. "Harrison, it is insured, right? It cost $40,000. Harrison looked like he was about to vomit. The last thing he needed was another insurance claim while he was trying to commit insurance fraud on his cargo. "Find it, Serena. Just look on the floor." "I am looking." She dropped to her knees, sweeping her hands over the Persian rug. "It is not here. It vanished." Then, she stopped. She slowly lifted her head and looked at me. "Holly," she said. Her voice was trembling with fake accusation. "You were standing right here." "I was," I said calmly, "and I haven't moved." "You were the only one near the table," Evelyn said, her voice dropping to a dangerous, predatory register. She walked toward me. "And your bag was on the table. Are you accusing me of stealing an earring?" I asked. I didn't back away. I stood my ground. "I am stating facts," Evelyn hissed. "The earring was there. You were there. Now the earring is gone. And let us be honest. Holly, desperate people do desperate things. We know about your debts. We know about your lifestyle. $10,000 is a lot of money to you. But $40,000, that changes a life." "I did not take her earring," I said, my voice steady. "Then you won't mind emptying your bag," Evelyn challenged. I looked at Carter. He was standing 10 feet away. He looked at his mother, then at Serena on the floor, then at me. This was it. This was the moment where he said, "Stop it. She is my girlfriend. She is honest. She gave me $5,000 this morning to help this family. She is not a thief." Carter shifted his weight. He looked at his shoes. "Holly," he said, his voice a pathetic whisper. Just dump the bag. Prove them wrong so we can go to the gala. Please, just do it for me." The silence that followed that sentence was heavier than lead. "For you," I repeated. "Yes, to clear the air," Carter said, looking everywhere but at my face. "Fine." I walked to the center of the room. I stood over the expensive rug. I held my bag upside down. I unclasped it. The contents fell out in slow motion. My wallet, a tube of chapstick, my phone, the keys to my Honda, and then, with a soft clink, a diamond stud earring hit the floor and rolled toward Serena's red dress. The room exploded. "I knew it!" Serena screamed, snatching the diamond up. "I knew it, you little thief. You saw it sitting there and you just swiped it." "Oh my God," Evelyn gasped, pressing a hand to her chest. "In my house. You steal in my house, after we fed you, after we welcomed you." Harrison shook his head, looking at me with pure disgust. "I should call the police right now. This is grand larceny." "Carter," Evelyn yelled. "Look at her. Look at who you brought into our lives. A common thief." Carter looked at me. His face was a mask of betrayal. But it wasn't betrayal because he thought I stole it. It was betrayal because I had allowed myself to be framed and caused a scene. Holly, Carter stammered. "Why, I mean, if you needed money that bad." I felt a cold smile touch my lips. It wasn't a smile of happiness. It was the smile of a chess player who just watched their opponent move their queen into a trap. I didn't defend myself. I didn't cry. I didn't shout that Serena had planted it. I simply reached up to my left shoulder. I touched the cheap-looking flower brooch pinned to my dress. "It is a lovely earring," I said, my voice cutting through their shouting like a razor blade. "Serena, you have excellent sleight of hand. Did you learn that from your friends in the Varga Syndicate, or did you pick it up on your own?" "What are you talking about?" Serena snapped, standing up and clutching the earring. "You were caught red-handed." "Carter," I said, turning to him. "You asked me to prove it. You asked me to clear the air, so I will." I pulled my phone from the pile of belongings on the floor. I tapped the screen 3 times. "At Blue Ridge Dispatch," I said, lying effortlessly. "We handle sensitive cargo, high-value bonds, pharmaceuticals. Because of the liability, all field staff are required to wear body-worn recording devices during active hours. It is company policy. If we are accused of theft, we have to produce the footage." I held the phone up. I turned the screen toward them. "This is a live feed from the camera pinned to my dress," I said. "It has been recording for the last 48 hours. Cloud storage, encrypted." I tapped the playback button on the screen. A crystal-clear video played. It showed the drawing room from my perspective. It showed Serena asking for a mint. It showed her walking to my bag. And then, in high definition, it showed Serena's hand. It showed her palming the earring from her own ear. It showed her pretending to dig for a mint. And it showed her dropping the diamond stud into the open side pocket of my clutch. The room went so quiet, I could hear the hum of the electricity in the walls. Serena's face went from flush to ghost white in a single second. Her mouth opened, but no sound came out. Evelyn stared at the screen. Her eyes widened. She looked at the video, then at Serena, then at me. "That," Evelyn started, her voice cracking. That is a felony," I finished for her. "Fabricating evidence, filing a false report, attempted entrapment, and since the item is valued at $40,000, that is a significant prison sentence." I looked at Harrison. "Shall we call the police now?" "Harrison, you were so eager a moment ago. I am sure they would love to see this video. And while they are here, maybe they can look into the provenance of that bracelet Serena is wearing, or the bridge loan paperwork you are sweating over." Serena made a sound like a wounded animal. "No, it was a joke. It was just a prank." "A prank?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. "You called me a thief. You tried to ruin my reputation. You tried to have me arrested." "It was a misunderstanding," Evelyn shouted, stepping between me and Serena. Her regal composure was gone. She looked terrified. "Holly, listen to me. Put the phone away. We are family. We were just testing you to see if you could handle pressure." "Testing me?" I laughed. It was a cold, dry sound. "You failed the test. Evelyn, you all did." Carter stepped forward, looking pale. "Holly, babe, please, turn it off. Delete it. Serena didn't mean it. She is just stressed." "Stressed," I repeated. I tapped the screen and paused the video. I did not delete it. "I am going to keep this," I said. "I am going to upload it to a secondary server right now." I tapped a few buttons. A loading bar appeared and completed. "There," I said. "Now it is safe. Even if you smash my phone, the video exists." Evelyn was trembling. She realized that the power dynamic had just shifted violently. I was no longer the poor guest. I was the person holding a grenade with the pin pulled out. "What do you want?" Evelyn whispered. "Money, more money." "I don't want your money," I said, bending down to pick up my wallet and keys. I put them back in my bag, leaving the diamond earring on the floor where it had fallen. "I want to go to the gala," I said calmly. "I want to finish this weekend. And I want you all to remember that for the next 3 hours, I am the only reason Serena isn't leaving in handcuffs." I stood up straight and smoothed my dress. "Now, if you will excuse me, I need to fix my makeup. I seem to have been crying on the inside." I turned and walked out of the drawing room. I didn't look back. but I could feel their eyes on me. They were terrified. They were confused. They were trapped, and they still had no idea who I really was. They thought I was a dispatcher with a body cam. They didn't know I was the CEO who had just authorized the purchase of their debt. I walked down the hallway to the powder room. My hands were steady. My heart was slow. The game had changed. They had tried to frame me for a petty crime. In doing so, they had handed me the weapon I needed to destroy them legally, socially, and financially. I looked in the mirror. "Showtime. Holly?" I whispered. The gala was going to be interesting. The summons came exactly 10 minutes before we were scheduled to leave for the gala. I was in the carriage house, applying a final coat of lipstick in the dim light of the singular flickering bulb, when the butler knocked on the door. He did not look me in the eye. He simply informed me that Mrs. Langford required my presence in the library immediately. I grabbed my clutch, the one that now contained the evidence of Serena's crime, and walked across the garden. The air was cooling down. The Santa Barbara evening settling in with a breeze that smelled of jasmine and money. But as I entered the main house, the temperature seemed to drop 20 degrees. I entered the library. It was a room designed to intimidate, filled with books that had never been read, and leather chairs that cost more than most people's cars. Evelyn was sitting behind Harrison's massive oak desk. Harrison stood by the window, swirling a glass of scotch, looking like a man waiting for a firing squad. Carter was there, too, sitting in a corner chair, looking miserable. "Sit down, Holly," Evelyn said. She did not offer a greeting. She pointed to a stiff wooden chair positioned directly in front of the desk. I sat. I crossed my legs. I waited. Evelyn placed a folder on the desk. She opened it and slid a thick document toward me. The paper was heavy, legal grade. "We are going to the gala," Evelyn said. Her voice clipped and precise. "We are going to present a united front. We are going to pretend that the unfortunate incident with Serena did not happen. We are doing this for the family name." "Okay," I said. "However," Evelyn continued, her eyes narrowing, "we cannot ignore the reality of who you are and who we are. Carter is the heir to a significant legacy. You are well. You are currently in a precarious financial position. We cannot risk a situation where you might think that dating our son entitles you to certain claims." I looked at the document. The title was in bold. Capitalized letters, Relationship Asset Separation and Waiver of Claims Agreement. It was a post-nuptial agreement for people who weren't even engaged. It was a legal aggressive maneuver designed to strip me of any rights to sue, to claim support, or to touch a single penny of the Langford estate should Carter and I break up or stay together. "What is this?" I asked, feigning ignorance. "It is a standard protection." Harrison grunted from the window. "It states that any assets acquired by Carter Langford, past, present, or future, remain solely his. It states that you, Holly James, have no claim to the Langford estate, the Langford Construction Holdings, or any family trusts. It also includes a non-disclosure clause preventing you from discussing our family's private matters with the press." Evelyn tapped a pen against the desk. "We want you to sign it, now, before we get in the limousine." I looked at Carter. "Did you know about this?" Carter looked at the floor. "It is just paperwork. Holly, Mom says it is just to keep the lawyers happy. If we stay together, it doesn't matter, right? Because I will take care of you. But if we break up, it just makes things clean." He was looking at me with that same weak, pleading expression he had worn when he asked me to empty my purse. He thought this was a compromise. He thought he was managing his mother. He didn't realize he was insulting me for the last time. I picked up the document. I scanned the legalese. It was actually a very poorly drafted contract. Their family lawyer must have been as incompetent as their accountant. It was sweeping and draconian. It declared that absolute separation of assets would be the governing law of our relationship. What was mine was mine. What was his was his. No community property. No commingling. They thought they were building a wall to keep me out of their castle. They had no idea they were building a wall that would keep them out of my bank vault. If I married Carter without this, and then revealed my net worth, he could potentially claim a stake in Hawthorne Secure Logistics in a divorce, arguing that my work during the marriage contributed to the asset's growth. In California, community property laws are tricky, but this document was a gift. It explicitly waived his right to my assets just as much as it waived my right to his. So, I said, looking up at Evelyn, if I sign this, we are completely financially separate forever. Completely, Evelyn said, a smug smile touching her lips. You leave with what you came with, nothing more. And Carter has no claim to anything I might build or own, I asked. Evelyn laughed. It was a short, sharp bark of amusement. Oh, honey, I do not think we need to worry about Carter wanting your dispatch salary or your Honda Civic. Yes, the separation goes both ways. It is absolute. Good, I said. I picked up the pen. Evelyn blinked. She had expected a fight. She had expected tears. She had expected me to read it for 20 minutes, to ask for time, to show some sign of hesitation that proved I was a gold digger trying to find a loophole. I didn't hesitate for a second. I flipped to the last page. I signed my name, Holly James, with a flourish. I dated it. There, I said, sliding the document back to her. Is there a copy for me? The room was silent. Harrison turned from the window, frowning. Carter looked confused. Evelyn stared at the signature as if it were a magic trick she couldn't figure out. You just signed it, Evelyn said suspiciously. You didn't even read the clause about the alimony waiver. I don't need alimony, I said, standing up. I believe in being self-sufficient. Isn't that what you have been teaching me all weekend, that I should know my place? I reached over and took the duplicate copy from the folder. I folded it neatly and placed it in my clutch, right next to the phone that held the video of Serena. I will keep this for my records, I said. Shall we go? We don't want to be late for the red carpet. I walked out of the library before they could say another word. I left them in their confusion. They felt like they had won. They felt like they had just secured the family fortune from the greedy hands of a poor girl. They had no idea they had just signed away their only lifeline. I walked briskly to the powder room near the foyer, locked the door, and pulled out my secondary device, a secure satellite phone disguised as a portable power bank. It was time to execute the kill. I dialed the private number of my general counsel. Marcus. It was 7 o'clock on a Saturday, but Marcus was paid $400,000 a year to pick up my calls at 3 a.m. Holly. Marcus answered on the first ring. We have the dossier on the Langford debt structure. It is ugly. I know it is ugly, I said, checking my reflection in the mirror. Buy it. There was a pause on the line. All of it. Everything, I said. The construction loans, the bridge financing, the personal lines of credit Harrison used to float the business last month. I want you to use the shell company. Vanguard Horizon. Do not let the name Hawthorne appear on any of the paperwork yet. Approach their creditors. They are distressed debt. The banks will be happy to unload them for 80 cents on the dollar. Buy the notes. Consider it done, Marcus said. We can have the papers executed within the hour. The electronic transfer is already authorized from your personal holding. Good. Now, here are the instructions for the morning, I said, my voice cold and professional. Once we own the debt, I want you to trigger the default clauses. They missed a covenant ratio last Tuesday. Use that. Freeze the disbursement of any remaining funds. I want Harrison Langford to wake up tomorrow morning and realize his credit cards don't work and his business accounts are locked. That is aggressive, Marcus noted. It will paralyze the construction company. There is a condition, I added quickly. I am not a monster. I want you to ring-fence the payroll account for the workers, the construction crews, the site managers, the administrative staff they get paid. If the accounts are frozen, authorize a direct injection from Vanguard Horizon to cover payroll for the next 3 months. I will not have innocent families starving because Harrison Langford needed to buy a new Bentley while his company burned. Understood, Marcus said. Protect the labor, squeeze the ownership, standard hostile restructuring. Anything else? Yes, the audit, I said. Initiate a forensic audit on the ethics and leadership clause of the bridge loan we just bought. I want them to sweat. I want them to spend the next 48 hours wondering which skeleton is going to fall out of the closet first. And Marcus, make sure the notification of the debt sale is delivered to Harrison electronically during the gala. I want him to receive the email while he is shaking hands. You are enjoying this, Marcus said. I am correcting a market inefficiency, I said. And Marcus, the dossier on Serena Vale. Send the final version to my main phone. I need the police case numbers for the theft ring in Miami. Sent? It is a long list. Holly, she has an outstanding warrant in Florida for check fraud under the alias Sarah Valesky. Perfect, I said. Thank you. Marcus? I hung up. I slipped the device back into my bag. I looked at myself in the mirror. The black dress was simple. Yes, but it was armor, and the piece of paper I had just signed the agreement that Evelyn thought was a leash was actually a shield. When the dust settled and the Langford empire collapsed under the weight of its own corruption, that document would ensure that not a single creditor could come after me. Carter couldn't ask for a bailout. Evelyn couldn't claim I owed them family loyalty. They had legally severed me from their mess. I opened the door and walked out into the foyer. The family was waiting. Harrison looked slightly more relaxed now that the problem of my potential gold digging had been solved. Evelyn was adjusting Serena's shawl. Carter was checking his phone. Finally, Evelyn sighed. The car is waiting. Holly, try to sit in the back jump seat. We need room for Serena's dress. Of course, I said. I followed them out to the stretch limousine. The driver held the door. I climbed into the cramped jump seat, facing backward, looking at the four of them. They looked like royalty. They smelled like expensive perfume. They were smiling, ready to go to the gala and pretend they were the kings and queens of Santa Barbara. I sat there, clutching my bag, and smiled back. It was a long drive to the venue. I spent it watching them. Harrison was boasting about a new deal he was sure would close on Monday. He didn't know his lender had just changed from a friendly bank to a shell company owned by the woman sitting across from him. Serena was talking about how she might run for office one day, following in her father's footsteps. She didn't know that a PDF file containing her mugshot from a Florida arrest 4 years ago was currently sitting in my inbox. Carter was staring out the window, looking moody. He probably thought he was the victim in all this. He probably thought he was making a noble sacrifice by dating me. He didn't know that he had just signed away his access to a billion-dollar fortune because he was too afraid to stand up to his mother. You are very quiet, Holly, Evelyn observed as the limo turned onto the highway. I hope you are not sulking about the contract. It really is for the best. I am not sulking, Evelyn, I said, my voice light and airy. I was just thinking about how right you were. Oh, yes, I said. You said that we need to protect our assets. You said that we shouldn't let emotions get in the way of business. I think that is excellent advice. I am really taking it to heart. Evelyn nodded, satisfied. Well, I am glad you finally understand how the world works. It is about leverage, my dear, and protecting what is yours. Exactly, I whispered. The limo slowed down. We were approaching the venue. I could see the searchlights sweeping the sky. I could see the red carpet and the paparazzi flashing their cameras. This was their stage. They had built it to show off their splendor. But they had forgotten one thing about stages. They are also where tragedies are performed. I patted my clutch one last time. The contract, the video, the dossier, the debt purchase confirmation. I wasn't walking into a party. I was walking into a courtroom, and I was the judge, jury, and executioner. Ready? Carter asked, looking at me. More than you can imagine, I said. The door opened, the flashbulbs popped, and the nightmare for the Langfords truly began. The limousine glided to a halt in front of the Santa Barbara Biltmore Four Seasons. Outside the tinted windows, the world was a blur of flashing strobes and shouting paparazzi. The gala was the event of the season, a fundraiser for oceanic preservation that doubled as a peacocking ground for every desperate socialite and underwater business tycoon on the West Coast. Inside the car, The air was perfumed with expensive anxiety. Harrison was checking his cufflinks for the 10th time. Serena was practicing her smile in a compact mirror, ensuring no lipstick had migrated to her teeth. Carter was staring at his phone, likely deleting the texts he had sent me earlier about making things right. Evelyn, however, was looking at me. She reached under the seat and pulled out a folded garment. It was a bright, garish teal polyester vest. It had the logo of the charity, a cartoon dolphin embroidered on the breast pocket, and the words, "Event Support," stamped on the back in reflective white lettering. "Here," Evelyn said, tossing it into my lap. I looked at the vest. Then I looked at her. "What is this?" I asked. "It is a volunteer vest," Evelyn said, her voice smooth and venomous. "I spoke to the coordinator earlier. Since you are not a ticketed guest, tickets were $5,000 a plate. After all, I arranged for you to enter as part of the support staff. You will help with the silent auction. It is a wonderful opportunity for you to see how these events work without burdening us." "You want me to wear a polyester vest over my dress?" I asked. "Your dress is invisible. Holly, this will give you purpose. Put it on. And when we get out, you are to walk 10 feet behind us. Do not walk next to Carter. He needs to be photographed with Serena. They look like a power couple. You look like, well, you look like the help. So be the help." Carter looked out the window. "Just put it on. Holly, it gets you inside, doesn't it?" I picked up the vest. It felt rough and cheap against my fingers. A normal person would have thrown it in Evelyn's face. A normal person would have screamed. But I wasn't a normal person anymore. I was a hunter walking into a trap I had set myself. "Okay," I said. I slipped the vest on. It clashed hideously with my vintage silk dress. It was oversized and smelled faintly of warehouse dust. "Perfect," Evelyn said, not bothering to hide her smirk. "Now you know your place. 10 feet. Holly, count them." The driver opened the door. Evelyn exited first, chin high, bathing in the flashes. Harrison followed, looking important. Then Serena, who paused to blow a kiss to a photographer who didn't know her name. Carter stepped out, buttoning his jacket. Stepping into the light, I waited a beat. I counted to 5. Then I stepped out. The cool ocean breeze hit my face. The noise of the crowd was a physical wall shouts of, "Over here, Mrs. Langford," and "Who are you wearing?" I walked exactly 10 feet behind them. I kept my head high. But I let the vest do the talking. To the onlookers, I was a staff member who had mistakenly wandered into the frame. I saw the photographers lower their cameras as I passed. I was visual noise. I was nobody. The Langfords reached the main entrance, where a heavy velvet rope was guarded by 2 men who looked like they were carved out of granite. Harrison flashed his invitation. The guards nodded, unhooking the rope with practiced deference. "Good evening, Mr. Langford, Mrs. Langford. Please, right this way." They swept through. Carter glanced back at me for a split second, a look of guilt, quickly masked by relief, and then he followed his mother. I stepped up to the rope. One of the guards, a man with a thick neck and an earpiece, stepped sideways, blocking my path. He didn't look at my face. He looked at the teal vest. "Staff entrance is around the back. Miss," he grunted, pointing a thumb toward a dark alleyway lined with dumpsters. "Loading dock B. You are late for the briefing." I stopped. Through the open doors, I could see the Langfords. They had paused in the lobby to greet a local news anchor. They saw me. They saw the guard block me. Evelyn turned her back. Harrison laughed at something the anchor said. Carter adjusted his tie. They were going to leave me there. They were going to let me stand in the street, humiliated, directed to the garbage entrance, while they drank champagne. It was the final power play. If I went to the back, I accepted my status as a servant. If I caused a scene, I proved I was trash. I did not move toward the back. I stood my ground. "I am a guest," I said to the guard. My voice was calm, but it carried the distinct frequency of authority. "My name is Holly James." The guard sighed, clearly annoyed. "Look, lady, the vest says support. Support goes in the back. Do not make me call a supervisor. Clear the carpet. We have VIPs coming through. I am a VIP, I said. The guard let out a short, incredulous laugh. Yeah, and I am the King of England. Move it. He reached out to grab my arm to physically escort me away. I wouldn't touch her if I were you. A deep voice boomed from behind me. The guard froze. His hand hovered an inch from my bicep. I turned around. Stepping out of a black town car was a man with silver hair and a tuxedo that cost more than the Langford's house. He walked with a cane, not because he needed it, but because it looked terrifying. It was Arthur Sterling, the chairman of the National Trade and Logistics Association, the man who controlled the flow of goods for half the continent. He was the most powerful man in the industry, a man Harrison Langford had been trying to get a meeting with for 6 years. Arthur looked at the guard, then he looked at me. His eyes widened. "Ms. James," Arthur said, his tone shifting from command to genuine shock. "Holly James, is that you?" The guard pulled his hand back as if he had touched a hot stove. He recognized Arthur Sterling. Everyone did. "Arthur," I said, offering a small, polite smile. "It is good to see you. I apologize for the attire. My hosts insisted on a specific dress code." Arthur looked at the teal vest. He looked at the event support logo. Then he looked at the entrance where the Langfords were still standing, watching the scene unfold with confusion. Arthur Sterling was a smart man. He understood power dynamics instantly. He saw the vest. He saw the rejection. And he saw the CEO of Hawthorne Secure Logistics standing with her head high. He let out a low chuckle. "I see. An undercover operation. Or are you just testing the competence of the local security?" "Something like that," I said. Arthur turned to the guard. The playfulness vanished from his face, replaced by steel. "Do you know who this is, son?" Arthur asked softly. "She is wearing a vest, sir." The guard stammered. "This is Holly James," Arthur said, announcing my name like it was a royal title. "If she wants to wear a clown suit, you let her in. If she wants to wear a trash bag, you lay down your jacket for her to walk on. She is not staff. She owns the building." He didn't mean literally. He meant metaphorically. In our world, Hawthorne Logistics owned everything that moved. The guard turned pale. He unhooked the rope so fast he almost tripped over it. "I am so sorry, Ms. James," the guard stuttered. "Please, go ahead." Arthur offered me his arm. "Shall we?" "Holly, I have been dying to ask you about the acquisition rumors in the Asian markets. Your team is making waves." "I would be delighted." "Arthur," I said. I unzipped the cheap teal vest. I shrugged it off my shoulders and let it drop to the red carpet. I didn't hand it to anyone. I just let it fall. A puddle of polyester at my feet. I stepped over it. I took Arthur Sterling's arm. We walked through the entrance. The flashbulbs went insane. The photographers didn't know who I was, but they knew Arthur Sterling, and they knew that if Arthur Sterling was escorting a woman, she was important. "Who is she?" I heard a photographer yell. "Get the shot. Get the shot." We walked into the lobby. The Langfords were still there. They had been waiting, perhaps hoping to see me ejected, or perhaps just stalling to make sure they were seen by the press. Harrison's jaw was literally hanging open. He held his champagne glass at a dangerous angle. "Harrison," Evelyn whispered, clutching his arm. "Harrison, look, is that Arthur Sterling?" "It is," Harrison croaked. "It is Sterling." "Why is he holding her arm?" Evelyn hissed. "Why is he talking to her?" They watched as Arthur leaned in and laughed at something I said, a genuine, respectful laugh. They watched as the security detail bowed to us. I looked at them as we passed. I didn't stop. I didn't acknowledge them as family. I acknowledged them as strangers. I gave them a polite, distant nod, the kind you give to a waiter who has just dropped a fork. "Holly," Carter called out, his voice cracking. He took a step toward me. I kept walking. "She must have latched onto him," Evelyn said rapidly, her voice rising in panic. "She must have met him in the parking lot. She is begging him for a job. That is it. She is hustling. It is embarrassing." She dropped the vest, Serena whispered, looking at the floor where the uniform lay. She just dropped it. We moved into the grand ballroom. It was a sea of tuxedos and gowns, a cavern of gold light and soft jazz. "Where are you seated?" "Holly," Arthur asked. "I am at table 1, the chairman's table. Join me. I insist. I am bored to tears with these politicians." I was supposed to be seated. I checked the imaginary seating chart in my head, knowing Evelyn had likely placed me near the kitchen. "Somewhere else, but I would accept your invitation." "Arthur?" "Excellent." He led me through the room. We walked past the B-list celebrities. We walked past the local business owners. We walked straight to the center of the room, to the table that was elevated on a small dais. The Langfords trailed behind us, heading toward table 4, a respectable table, but definitely not the table. They watched as the maitre d' pulled out a chair for me next to Arthur Sterling. They watched as a waiter immediately poured me a glass of vintage Dom Perignon. They watched as the mayor of Santa Barbara leaned across the table to shake my hand. Harrison stopped walking. He stood in the middle of the aisle, causing a traffic jam of waiters. "She is at table 1, Harrison whispered. The color had drained from his face, leaving it the color of old parchment. "Evelyn, she is at the chairman's table." "It is a mistake," Evelyn insisted, though her hand was trembling as she adjusted her shawl. "It has to be. Maybe she is the entertainment." "She is not singing, Evelyn," Harrison snapped. "Arthur Sterling just introduced her to the mayor. Look at them. They are talking business." Carter stared at me. For the first time all weekend, the fog of his entitlement seemed to be lifting, replaced by a cold, creeping realization. He looked at the woman in the black dress who was commanding the attention of the most powerful men in the room. He looked at me, and he realized he didn't know me at all. I felt their gaze. It was a physical weight, heavy with fear and confusion. I turned my head slightly. I caught Harrison's eye across the room. I raised my champagne glass, a small, silent toast, to the end. I thought. Harrison didn't toast back. He looked like he wanted to run, but there was nowhere to run. The doors were closed, the gala had begun, and the executioner was sitting at the head of the table. The gala dinner was in full swing, a cacophony of clinking silverware and polite, empty laughter. I sat at table 1, the seat of honor, listening to Arthur Sterling recount a story about a supply chain crisis in the Baltic Sea. I was nodding, engaged, but my peripheral vision was locked on table 4. The Langfords were not eating. They were huddled together, whispering furiously, their eyes darting toward me every few seconds like nervous prey sensing a predator in the tall grass. They looked desperate. They looked confused. And finally, they looked resolved. I saw Evelyn stand up. She grabbed a full glass of red wine from the waiter's tray passing by. She didn't hold it by the stem. She gripped the bowl like a weapon. She began to walk toward the dais, her face set in a mask of concern that didn't reach her cold, dead eyes. Serena followed close behind, clutching her purse, a cruel smirk playing on her lips. "Here we go," I whispered to myself. Arthur stopped talking. He followed my gaze. "Is there a problem?" "Holly?" "Just a final attempt at a power play." "Arthur," I said calmly. "Watch." Evelyn reached our table. She didn't greet the mayor. She didn't acknowledge Arthur Sterling. She looked only at me. "Holly, darling," she exclaimed, her voice pitched loud enough to turn heads at the surrounding tables. "I am so sorry to interrupt, but I think there has been a terrible mistake with the seating. You know staff isn't supposed to be in the VIP section." She moved closer, invading my personal space. "And oh my," she said, feigning a stumble. "You look so out of place." She lunged forward. It was a clumsy, deliberate motion. She tipped the large glass of Cabernet Sauvignon forward. The dark red liquid splashed across the front of my black vintage silk dress. It soaked into the fabric instantly, running down my chest and pooling in my lap. It was cold and sticky. The chatter at table 1 stopped instantly. The mayor gasped. Arthur Sterling stood up, his face thunderous. "Oh, dear," Evelyn cried, her hands flying to her mouth in mock horror. "I am so clumsy. But really? Holly, you should have moved. You are always in the way. Aren't you? Just like at the house? Always underfoot." "Look at her," Serena chimed in, stepping out from behind Evelyn. Her voice was shrill, cutting through the silence of the room. "She is a mess. A stain on the tablecloth." Serena reached into her clutch. She pulled out a single, crisp bill. "Here," Serena said loudly. She crumpled the bill and threw it. The paper ball hit my shoulder and fell to the floor at my feet. It was $100. "Take this for a taxi," Serena sneered. "Go back to your little apartment. Go back to your dispatch center. You don't belong here. You are embarrassing us. You are embarrassing Carter." The room had gone deathly silent. The band had stopped playing. 300 of the wealthiest people in California were staring at the scene. They saw a young woman covered in wine. They saw a crumpled bill on the floor. They saw the Langford women standing over me like vultures. I looked at the money. "Pick it up," Serena hissed. "It is more than you make in a week." I stood up. I did not pick up the money. I did not wipe the wine from my dress. I let the stain sit there. A dark testament to their cruelty. I reached forward to the center of the table. I picked up the wireless microphone that had been left there for the upcoming speeches. I tapped the head of the microphone. Thump, thump. The sound echoed through the massive ballroom speakers, a deep, resonant heartbeat that made everyone jump. "Is this on?" I asked. My voice was calm. It wasn't the voice of a victim. It was the voice of a woman who commanded fleets of ships and armies of trucks. Evelyn's eyes widened. "What are you doing?" "Put that down." "No," I said. "I don't think I will." I stepped away from the table. Moving to the center of the dais, I looked out at the crowd. I looked at the cameras that were now trained on me. "Good evening," I said. "My name is Holly. For the last 48 hours, I have been a guest at the Langford estate. In that time, I have been forced to sleep in a gardening shed with no air conditioning. I have been fed from the staff menu. I have been given a polyester vest and told to enter through the garbage dock. I have been framed for a felony theft of jewelry to cover up a family member's crimes. And 10 minutes ago, I was forced to sign a legal waiver stripping me of any rights to the Langford assets, under the assumption that I am a gold digger targeting their fortune." A murmur rippled through the crowd. Shock. Disbelief. "Harrison!" Evelyn shrieked, looking back at her husband. "Do something. She is drunk. Get security." "I am not drunk," I said, my voice hardening into steel. "And I am not finished." I turned to look directly at Harrison, who was standing frozen near table 4, his face the color of ash. "Harrison Langford," I said. "For weeks, you have been desperately trying to secure a bridge loan to save your construction empire from bankruptcy. You have been waiting for a signature from your logistics partner to release a shipment of materials that you fraudulently undervalued to evade taxes. You have been begging for a meeting with the CEO of that company. You called them invisible. You called them bureaucrats. You told me at dinner that everyone has a price." Harrison took a step back. He was shaking. "Well, Harrison," I said, "you finally got your meeting." I paused. I let the silence stretch until it was almost painful. "My name is Holly James, and I'm the founder and CEO of Hawthorne Secure Logistics." The gasp that went through the room was like a physical wave. Arthur Sterling was smiling, a slow, appreciative nod. The mayor looked stunned. Harrison's knees actually buckled. He grabbed the back of a chair to stay upright. "No, that is impossible. You are a dispatcher." "I am the person who built the system you tried to cheat," I said. "And as of this moment, Hawthorne Logistics is formally rejecting your shipment. We are canceling the partnership. The reason listed on the manifest will be gross ethical failure and attempted fraud. Your bridge loan is dead. Harrison, your cargo is seized." "No," Harrison wailed, a guttural sound of pure despair. "You can't. That kills the company." "You killed the company," I corrected him. "I am just burying the body." I turned to Serena. She was standing frozen. her mouth open, the arrogance drained from her face, leaving only terror. "And now, let us talk about you." "Serena," I said. I pulled my phone from my clutch. I tapped the screen. "Can we get the feed on the main screen? Please." I asked the tech booth. The massive projection screen behind the stage flickered. The logo of the charity disappeared. In its place, a police mugshot appeared. It was Serena, looking younger, with messy hair and no makeup, holding a placard with a booking number. "This is not Serena Vale," I announced to the room. "This is Sarah Valesky. She is not the daughter of a senator. She is a fugitive from Florida with 3 outstanding warrants for check fraud and identity theft. She is currently insolvent, with over $200,000 in debt to private loan sharks." Serena screamed. "Turn it off. Turn it off right now." "And that bracelet she is wearing?" I pointed to her wrist. The one she claimed was Art Deco. "It is the Celestial Cuff, stolen from a shipment in Zurich 3 weeks ago by the Varga Syndicate. It is valued at $400,000. My company has been tracking it." I looked toward the back of the room. "Officers," I said into the microphone. "She is all yours." The doors burst open. 4 uniformed police officers and 2 detectives in suits marched in. They didn't look at the crowd. They looked straight at Serena. "No!" Serena shrieked, backing away, knocking into a waiter. "He gave it to me. I didn't steal it. I just bought it. Harrison, help me." Harrison didn't move. He was staring at his phone. The detectives grabbed Serena. She fought, kicking and screaming, her red Valentino dress tangling around her legs. "You witch!" Serena screamed at me as they cuffed her hands behind her back. "You ruined everything. You were supposed to be nobody." "I am the person who checks the receipts. Sarah," I said into the mic. "Goodbye." They dragged her out. The room was in chaos. People were standing, taking photos, whispering furiously, but I wasn't done with the Langfords. I looked at Harrison. He was staring at his phone screen with dead eyes. "Check your email." "Harrison," I said softly into the mic. "You just received a notification." Harrison looked up at me. His eyes were red, watery pits of fear. "What did you do?" he whispered. The microphone picked it up. "You were worried about your creditors," I said. "You were worried the bank would call your loans. You don't have to worry about the bank anymore. I bought your debt. Harrison, all of it. The construction loans, the personal lines of credit, the mortgage on the Montecito estate. I own it all. It is held by a company called Vanguard Horizon. That is me." Harrison dropped his phone. It shattered on the marble floor. "And as your new creditor," I continued, "I am calling the debt. Effectively immediately, your accounts are frozen, your assets are pending liquidation. You have 30 days to vacate the property before foreclosure proceedings begin." Evelyn let out a sound that was half sob, half scream. She looked around the room, realizing that her social standing had just been incinerated. The women she had insulted me with earlier were now looking at her with undisguised horror. She was not the queen of Montecito anymore. She was a bankrupt woman standing in a puddle of her own cruelty. And then, there was Carter. He had been standing in the shadows of his parents' destruction. Now, he ran forward. He ran up the steps of the dais. Ignoring the security guards, he stopped in front of me. He looked at the wine stain on my dress. He looked at the microphone in my hand. He looked at the face of the woman he had treated like an accessory. "Holly," he gasped, breathless. "Holly, wait." "Baby, listen." The microphone was still near my mouth. Everyone could hear him. "We can fix this," Carter pleaded. Reaching for my hand, I pulled back sharply. "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know about the fraud. I was just doing what they told me. You know me. You know I love you." "Do you?" I asked. "Yes. Of course we are a team," Carter said, his voice rising in desperation. "Look, forget my parents. They are crazy. But us, we are real. You can't just destroy my family like this. We can work this out. I can help you run Hawthorne. We can be a power couple. Just call off the debt. Please, for us." He was begging, in front of 300 people. Carter Langford was begging for his lifestyle. He wasn't begging for me. He was begging for access to the checkbook. I looked at him. I remembered the way he had whispered for me to take the money. I remembered the way he had asked me to empty my purse. I remembered the way he had let me walk behind him in a polyester vest. "Carter," I said, "do you remember that contract your mother made me sign an hour ago?" Carter froze. The waiver, the relationship asset separation agreement," I clarified. "The one that says you have absolutely no claim to my assets, my company, or my future earnings. The one that says our financial lives are completely severed." Carter's face went pale. He realized what he had done. He had signed away his only parachute. "You wanted to protect the Langford legacy from me," I said. "Congratulations, Carter. You succeeded. You are completely safe from my billions. You don't get a dime. You don't get a job. And you certainly don't get me." I dropped the microphone. Thump. It hit the floor with a finality that echoed through the ballroom. I turned to Arthur Sterling. "Arthur," I said, my voice returning to a conversational volume. Though the room was so quiet, everyone heard it. "I believe I have ruined my dress. Would you mind escorting me to my car?" Arthur stood up. He looked at the Langfords, Harrison broken, Evelyn sobbing, Carter standing like a statue of regret, and then he looked at me with immense respect. "It would be the honor of my life, Ms. James," Arthur said. He offered me his arm. I took it. We walked off the stage, down the steps, and through the center of the ballroom. The crowd parted for us like the Red Sea. I didn't look back at the Langfords. I didn't need to. I knew exactly what they looked like. They looked like people who had just learned the most expensive lesson of their lives. Never mistake silence for weakness, and never, ever hand the executioner a signed confession. The ride back to the Montecito estate was not shared. I had left the gala in Arthur Sterling's town car, while the Langfords had been forced to wait for their limousine in the glare of the paparazzi flashbulbs, answering shouted questions about why the police had dragged their daughter-in-law away in handcuffs. I arrived at the house 20 minutes before they did. The heavy iron gates opened for me, not because I had a remote, but because the new security team I had hired was already stationed at the perimeter. I walked into the house. It was silent. The staff had been dismissed for the night, sent home with a generous bonus I had wired to them directly. I did not go to the carriage house. I went to the main library. I sat in Harrison's high-backed leather chair. It was oversized and smelled of cigars and self-importance. I placed a single file folder on the mahogany desk. Beside it, I placed a glass of water. Standing in the shadows of the room was Marcus, my general counsel, who had flown in from San Francisco while the gala was imploding. We waited. Eventually, the front door slammed open. "I am going to kill her." Evelyn's voice echoed from the foyer, shrill and hysterical. "I am going to sue her for defamation. I am going to ruin her." "Keep your voice down." "Evelyn," Harrison groaned. He sounded like a man who had aged 10 years in 2 hours. "My phone has not stopped ringing. The board members, the bank, everyone saw the live stream." "Where is she?" Carter asked. "Her stuff is still in the shed. She has to come back for her car." They stormed down the hallway. They were looking for a fight. They were looking for a victim to scream at to make themselves feel powerful again. They thought that even if they had lost face in public, this house was still their fortress. The library doors were open. They stopped dead in the doorway. Harrison stared at me sitting in his chair. He stared at Marcus, a man in a sharp charcoal suit who looked like a shark in human clothing. "Get out of my chair," Harrison growled, though his voice lacked its usual bite. "Who the hell are you people? How did you get in here?" "I think you should sit down." "Harrison," I said calmly, "but not in this chair. Try the guest ones. They are a bit lower, but you will get used to it." "This is trespassing," Evelyn shrieked, stepping forward. "Get out of my house before I call the police." "We already called the police, Mrs. Langford," Marcus said smoothly. "They are aware that the new owner is on the premises conducting an asset inventory. They have no issue with it." The room went silent. "New owner?" Carter asked, his voice trembling. "What are you talking about?" I tapped the file folder on the desk. "At 7:30 this evening," I said. A holding company called Vanguard Horizon purchased the entirety of the debt secured against this property, as well as the outstanding construction loans of Langford Development, at 8:15, immediately following the public revelation of fraud and the arrest of Serena Vale. Vanguard Horizon exercised the default clause in your mortgage agreement. The moral turpitude clause is very specific. Harrison. Criminal activity on the premises allows for immediate acceleration of the debt. I looked him in the eye. You couldn't pay the accelerated debt. I continued. So, the title has reverted to the lender. I am the lender. This is my house. Harrison collapsed into one of the guest chairs. He looked around the room, at the books, the paintings, the legacy he thought was untouchable. You can't do this, he whispered. We have rights, squatters' rights, something. You have 72 hours to vacate the premises, Marcus corrected him, sliding a paper across the desk. This is the eviction notice. It is generous. Usually, we only give 24. Carter stepped forward. He looked frantic. The reality that he was about to be homeless was crashing down on him. You can't kick us out, Holly, Carter said, trying to summon some of his old charm, but looking more like a frightened child. We were together. We have a relationship. Under California law, if we cohabitated, I have rights. You promised to support me. You can't just leave me with nothing. He looked at his mother for support. Evelyn nodded vigorously. Exactly, Evelyn cried. You lived here. You were part of the family. You cannot just steal our home. Carter will sue you for palimony, for emotional distress. He is entitled to half of what you have if you were common law partners. It was the move I had been waiting for, the desperate grab for cash. I didn't speak. I just smiled. I reached into my bag, the same battered clutch they had mocked all weekend, and pulled out a folded document. It was the relationship asset separation and waiver of claims agreement. I unfolded it slowly. I smoothed it out on the desk. Do you recognize this? Evelyn, I asked. Evelyn stared at the paper. Her face went gray. You made me sign this 3 hours ago, I said. You were so terrified that I was a poor girl trying to steal your son's money that you drafted the most restrictive separation agreement my lawyers have ever seen. It states, quite clearly, that our assets are forever separate. It states that Carter Langford has absolutely no claim to the property, income, or future earnings of Holly James. It waives all rights to support, alimony, or legal recourse. I turned the document around so they could see my signature, and Carter's signature, and Evelyn's witness signature. You built a wall to keep me out. Evelyn, I said softly. But you forgot to check which side of the wall the money was on. Now, that wall is locking you out. Carter stared at the paper. He looked at his mother with pure hatred. You made her sign it, Carter whispered. Mom, you made her sign it. I was protecting you, Evelyn stammered, backing away. I thought she was a dispatcher. I thought she wanted your trust fund. My trust fund is gone, Carter yelled. Dad spent it on the bridge loan. This was my only chance. He turned to me, tears streaming down his face. Real tears this time. Holly, please, he begged, falling to his knees in front of the desk. It was a pathetic sight. I didn't know. I swear. I am a victim here too. They controlled me. But I love you. You know I do. We can fight this together. Just tear up the contract. Let me in. I looked down at him for a moment. I remembered the man I met in the coffee shop, the man who made me laugh, the man I thought was different. Marcus, I said. Show him the texts. Marcus opened a tablet and placed it in front of Carter. On the screen was a thread of messages recovered from Carter's phone cloud backup during the audit. They were messages between Carter and a friend named Todd, dated 2 weeks ago. Carter. Bringing the dispatch girl home this weekend. Mom hates her. But she is easy. Low maintenance. Todd. Why bother if she is broke, Carter? She is a placeholder, man. She pays half the rent in L.A. She cooks. She doesn't ask questions. Once the construction deal closes and I get my bonus, I will dump her and find someone with actual status. Just need to wait for the right time. Carter read the messages. He stopped breathing. I leaned forward. I wasn't a girlfriend to you. Carter, I said. I was a discount appliance. You didn't love me. You loved that I was cheap. Carter looked up. He didn't have an excuse. The digital evidence stripped him of his last defense. He slumped back on his heels, defeated. Harrison finally spoke. His voice was hollow, broken. The company, Harrison rasped. Langford Construction. It employs 200 people. The site's the contracts. If you liquidate it, those people lose their jobs. My grandfather built that company. I know, I said. And unlike you, I care about those 200 people. I slid another document across the desk. I am not going to liquidate the company, I said. I am acquiring it. I am buying the operating assets of Langford Construction for the sum of $1. $1, Harrison choked. It is worth millions. It is worth nothing, I said. It is drowning in debt, tainted by fraud, and led by a man who is about to be indicted for tax evasion. The brand is toxic. I am buying the equipment and the payroll liability. I am saving the jobs, but the Langford name dies tonight. I pointed to the signature line. Sign the transfer, Harrison, or I let it go into bankruptcy, and your employees lose their pensions. It is your choice. Do one decent thing in your life. Harrison looked at the pen. His hand shook violently. He looked at Evelyn, who was weeping silently in the corner. He looked at Carter, who was staring at the floor. He picked up the pen. He signed. Thank you, I said. The company will be rebranded as Blue Ridge Construction effective tomorrow. My management team is already en route to the headquarters to secure the files. I stood up. You have 3 days to pack your personal effects, I said. Do not touch the furniture. Do not touch the art. Those are now assets of Vanguard Horizon to recoup the losses from your fraud. You may take your clothes and your toiletries. Where will we go? Evelyn whispered. We have nowhere. I believe there is a motel on the highway, I said. It is very reasonable. I think a room costs about what you paid for that bottle of wine you wasted on my dress. I walked around the desk. I picked up my clutch. I walked past Harrison. I walked past Evelyn. I stopped in front of Carter. He was still kneeling, broken and exposed. He looked up at me. I lost you, he whispered. I am so sorry. Holly, I lost the best thing I ever had. I looked at him, and I felt absolutely nothing. The anger was gone. The hurt was gone. There was only the cool, clear indifference of a stranger. You didn't lose me. Carter, I said. I was never yours to begin with. You were dating a mirror. You only saw what you wanted to see. I leaned in closer, delivering the final blow. And I didn't lose you, I said. I just stopped saving you. I turned and walked out of the library. I walked down the long hallway, my heels clicking on the marble floor that I now owned. I walked out the front door into the cool night air. The driveway was empty, save for my car. The fountain was still bubbling. The stars were still shining. The Langfords were behind me, trapped in the ruins of their own arrogance. They were alone with their debt, their crimes, and the silence of a house that no longer recognized them. I got into my car. I didn't look back at the mansion. I put the car in gear and drove through the gates. The heavy iron doors swung shut behind me with a final, resounding clang. The game was over, and for the first time in a long time, the board was clear. Thank you so much for listening to this story. I would love to know where you are tuning in from. So please leave a comment below and share your thoughts on whether the Langfords got what they deserved. If you enjoyed this revenge drama, please subscribe to the Maya Revenge Stories channel, like this video, and hit that hype button to help this story reach more people.